November 2022. On screens around the world, the same word keeps appearing: withdraw. Then it appears again and again. Customers of FTX are trying to pull their money out. $1 billion in a single day, then roughly $4 billion more. And then, suddenly, the button stops working. Withdrawals are frozen. The money is gone. Where billions of dollars in customer deposits should have been sitting, safe and untouched, there is instead a hole, an $8 billion hole. Just days earlier, FTX was the third largest cryptocurrency exchange on Earth. It had a peak valuation of around $32 billion. It had a charismatic 30-year-old founder and a brand built on the promise of a safe, professionally run exchange. And then, in roughly 10 days, all of it vanished. Not declined, not stumbled, vanished. So how does an empire that size evaporate in a week and a half? To understand the collapse, you have to understand what FTX actually was and what it was secretly built on. Rewind to 2017. A young trader named Sam Bankman-Fried founds Alameda Research, a firm that makes money by exploiting tiny price differences in crypto markets, buying low in one place, selling high in another, using borrowed money to amplify the bets. It works. In 2019, Bankman-Fried and a coder named Gary Wang launched something bigger, an exchange called FTX, a place where ordinary people could buy and sell crypto. FTX created its own in-house token called FTT, and the money poured in. A $900 million funding round valued the exchange at $18 billion. Within a couple of years, that number climbed toward $32 billion, from a trading desk to a $30 billion empire in just a few years. But the numbers were only half the story. The other half was the image. Bankman-Fried built a brand designed to disarm scrutiny. He cultivated the look of a rumpled, distracted genius who couldn't be bothered with appearances. He talked about effective altruism, the idea that he was getting rich only so he could give it all away to save the world. He became a major political donor. The messy genius story was irresistible. Here was a man, the narrative went, too brilliant and too good to bother with appearances. And if a founder seems uninterested in money for its own sake, you tend to ask fewer questions about where the money actually is. So where was the money? This is the heart of it. FTX told customers their deposits were safe, segregated, professionally managed. But according to regulators, the software told a different story. Gary Wang, the co-founder who wrote the code, built in a special exception for Alameda, the trading firm Bankman-Fried also owned. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission described it as an allow negative flag. In plain terms, while every other account had to play by the rules, Alameda was exempted from the standard risk checks. It was given what amounted to a limitless line of credit. It could run a negative balance indefinitely and keep drawing funds. And the funds it was drawing on, prosecutors alleged, were customer deposits, money that belonged to other people. Billions of dollars flowed out of FTX and into Alameda to fund risky trades, venture investments, political donations, and personal spending. Now layer on the second problem. What was holding Alameda's balance sheet up? Largely, FTX's own token, FTT, a token that FTX had created out of thin air. Think about what that means. The trading firm had borrowed billions in real customer money, and a huge share of the assets it claimed to be worth were tied to a coin its sister company printed itself. As long as FTT held its value, and nobody asked for their money back all at once, the illusion held. It was, in effect, a house of cards where the cards were printed in-house. Commingled funds, propped up by a self-created asset, concealed by software. All it needed was a gust of wind. The wind came on November 2nd, 2022. A CoinDesk reporter named Ian Allison published a story examining Alameda's balance sheet and revealed just how heavily it leaned on that FTT token. The crypto world read it and grew nervous. Then a much bigger player stepped in. Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of rival exchange Binance, announced that Binance would sell off its own large holdings of FTT. To a jittery market, that was a signal: get out. On November 6th, customers withdrew around $1 billion in a single day. Alameda's chief executive, Caroline Ellison, publicly offered to buy Binance's FTT at $22 apiece, an attempt to defend the price. It didn't work. The next day, roughly $4 billion in withdrawal requests poured in. The bank run had begun, and there was no money to meet it. For a brief moment, there seemed to be a lifeline. On November 8th, with withdrawals halted, Binance announced a non-binding letter of intent to acquire FTX, a rescue, but it lasted barely a day. After looking at FTX's actual books, Binance walked away, citing concerns about mishandled customer funds. There was nothing to save. On November 10th, Bahamian regulators froze FTX's assets. On November 11th, FTX, Alameda, and more than 100 affiliated entities filed for bankruptcy. Bankman-Fried resigned. In came John J. Ray III, a veteran restructuring specialist brought in to take over. After reviewing FTX, Ray told Congress something extraordinary. In his entire career, he said, he had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. No reliable records, no proper oversight, just chaos where a $30 billion company should have been. Then came the reckoning. On December 12th, Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas. The next day, the Department of Justice, the SEC, and the CFTC announced parallel actions. Within weeks, his inner circle began to turn. Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang pleaded guilty and started cooperating with prosecutors. Ellison would become the government's star witness. At trial, the man who built FTX faced the people who built it with him. On November 2nd, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk story, a New York jury convicted Bankman-Fried on all 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. In March 2024, Judge Lewis Kaplan sentenced him to 25 years in prison, plus $11 billion in forfeiture. The fates of the others varied sharply. Ryan Salam, who did not cooperate, got 7.5 years. Caroline Ellison received 2 years. Nishad Singh, FTX's director of engineering, got time served. And Gary Wang, the man who wrote the code at the center of it all, but who cooperated early and extensively, received no prison time at all. Cooperation, it turned out, was worth more than almost anything else. And here's the twist that makes this story unusual. Most fraud collapses end with victims wiped out. This one didn't, at least not on paper. Under John Ray's restructuring, the FTX bankruptcy estate recovered around $16 billion. In October 2024, a judge approved a payback plan worth more than $14 billion. 98% of creditors were set to receive 190% of their allowed claims, more than they were owed. So everyone was made whole, right? Not quite. Read the fine print. Those claims were valued as of November 2022, the very bottom of the crypto market. In the years that followed, assets like Bitcoin rose dramatically. A customer who held crypto on FTX got back the dollar value from the worst possible moment and missed the appreciation that came after. Being repaid years later at depressed prices is not the same as never having lost your money in the first place. So what does FTX actually teach us? Strip away the crypto jargon, the effective altruism branding, and the rumpled genius image, and you're left with something very old. According to prosecutors, customer deposits were taken and spent. The books were falsified. The owners' 2 companies did business with each other in secret, on terms no outsider could see. This wasn't a new kind of crime invented by technology. It was one of the oldest crimes there is. Commingling and stealing client money, simply dressed in new clothes. And that's the transferable lesson. Technology can change how money moves. It cannot repeal the need for honesty, for keeping client funds separate and untouched, and for independent eyes on the books. When a company tells you your money is safe, the real question is never how sophisticated the technology is. It's a far simpler one. Can anyone outside the building actually verify that the money is still there? At FTX, for a long time, no one asked. And by the time they did, the answer was a $1 billion button that no longer worked.